one hole for each side of the bale, and then through this tensioning device, which keeps the twine tight as it's moving through the baler. Then from the twine box and through the tensioning device, the twine runs under here to a set of insulators that are on the back side of the needle carriage. The twine runs through those insulators and through.
Now you are nicer today, Daddy.
In the end of the needle, and it acts just like a sewing needle. So when the knotters trip and the needles come up, they carry that twine up to come to the knotters. Here I've hand rotated the baler so that the needles are halfway up into the baling chamber, and you can see what happens. The plunger moves rearward of the needles, and the needles rise up in recesses in the plunger so that they're carrying the twine up into empty space, and then they come up carrying the twine to the knotters, where the knotters grab the twine and do their thing. Here I've hand rotated the baler to bring the needles into their uppermost position. They've come out of the baler, up out of the knotters, and they're sitting here above the knotter here. So what we have when this has twine in it is we've got twine running through a hole at the top, there's twine running along the bottom, and there's twine running along the top. The twine running along the bottom has already been wrapped around the bale that came before it, and a knife here cuts that twine and forms it into a knot to complete that bale. The other end of that cut twine gets caught in the knotter. There's a friction plate where it gets caught in there and starts to form the end of the next bale that's going to come. After that's cut, these needles come back down, carrying the twine with it, and they start wrapping around the next bale. I know it's complicated, but this is the best way that I can figure out to explain it. So after all this knotting business and being pushed through the chute, eventually the bales come to the thrower. Now, this is a thrower. It's not to be confused with a kicker. A kicker is a pan that sits back here that the bale lands on after it comes out of the chute, and the kicker is spring-loaded, so that pan springs the bale up and into the wagon. New Holland actually developed the pan kicker, but they elected not to use it because they thought it was too dangerous. Imagine if somebody was standing on it when it tripped. Anyway, this is a belt thrower. It actually catches the bales between two belts that are rotating and throws them out the back. This bale thrower is a later model than what originally would have come with this baler. This is a Model 70 bale thrower. Originally, the bale thrower for this model would have been a 53A, which has more difficulty in adjusting. The Model 53A would track with the wagon through a linkage that went on to the front of the wagon to turn the chute one way or the other, and it had a trip mechanism with a rope to adjust how fast the thrower was throwing the bale. A lot more complicated to work. This originally had a 53A on it when I bought it. I took the 53A off, I sold it, and I bought this Model 70 and put it on the baler. The baler and the thrower are completely separate pieces of equipment. You can take the thrower off and just use the baler to load wagons or drop bales on the ground. Here's how the bale thrower works. You have the main flywheel on the front of the baler. It is driven by a belt that runs on the main flywheel up to this pulley here. There's an idler pulley here, and the way you adjust how far the bales are being thrown is through the speed that the belts are rotating and back, the big wide belts. And the way you adjust their speed is there's a crank handle that goes up to the tractor here, and what that crank handle does is it adjusts the position of the idler pulley, putting more tension on the belt as it moves inward. This pulley here is a special kind of pulley with two shifts that move apart and together depending on the belt tension. So when those two shifts are together, the belt is riding on the outside of the pulley, thus making the shaft that goes back to the thrower rotate more slowly. When you put more tension on the belt, those two shifts move apart and the belt slides in, so there's a smaller diameter pulley that the belt is riding on, and it makes the shaft rotate faster. Pretty clever, I think. Now, from this front drive pulley here, there is a long shaft of intermediate bearings that comes all the way back to this pulley. This pulley has a belt on it, which goes around the right angle, which is pretty funky, drives this pulley, which in turn drives this pulley, which drives this flywheel, which helps give the bale thrower its own momentum. And from the flywheel, The top and bottom belts are driven via these pulleys. This is spring loaded, so that as the bale starts to load into here, the belts grab it, and they're tapered so that as the bale comes through, it does this and shoots the bale out the back. You can point this from side to side. Say you're going around a turn and you want to shoot the bale into the wagon, but the wagon's not straight behind the baler, via this hydraulic cylinder, which tilts it either way. The mechanical history of me and this baler is quite a long story.